Hello and welcome. I am really excited about today's episode because I will be interviewing an absolute superstar and he's going to be talking to us about how important it is to leverage yourself as part of your brand, which is really linked to becoming a key person of influence, which I promise will start to make more sense as we get into this episode. This is also about building demand and desire for your products and services, okay? Something that we all need to refine and get better and better at. It's about scaling up, having more impact, and definitely having more fun. Definitely do tune into this episode. Like I said, this is a superstar guest that we are privileged to have on the show. So without further ado, let's go. For more information on this episode or how to work with me, check out the show notes or visit betterinbusiness.global. You've tuned into Better in Business with Jeannie. As an award-winning strategic bookkeeper and business veteran, I am dedicated to helping entrepreneurs learn, grow, and prosper. This podcast aims to challenge your thinking. If you're not thinking the right way, how can you act the right way? Each episode will dive into key drivers of success, which I also call the rules of the game. Learn the rules, play to win. Let's go. I like to start every episode by reminding you that it is globally recognized that pillar one for the success of any business is up-to-date, accurate bookkeeping. If your books are not right up to date, tune into episode 1, please. You can also get in touch with me if you'd like some help. Let me tell you about today's guest. So today's guest is Glen Carlson. He is the founder of Dent Global, best known for the award-winning Key Person of Influence book and Business Accelerator program, which I have done personally, and I can tell you that it was definitely one of the most impressive programs that I've ever been a part of in all my years. So from the chaos of the GFC, Glen has built Dent into what Entrepreneur.com refer to as the world's leading brand accelerator. With 5 business acquisitions under his belt and a team of 45 across 12 time zones, Dent has shaped the trajectory of hundreds of best-selling authors, TED speakers, and award-winning fast growth companies. In 2021, Virgin named Dent as Business Enabler of the Year, and the Growing Business Awards named them Business Advisor of the Year. Glen's passion is helping entrepreneurs stand out, scale up, and use their business to make a positive impact in the world, or as he would say, make a dent in the universe. Welcome, Glen.
I'm so grateful to be here, Jeannie. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to have you on the show. You know, I'm a big fan, and which is why I've asked you to come on. I also harp on to my clients about the importance of becoming a key person of influence. Compulsory reading is Daniel's books.
Yeah.
You know, no matter where they're at in business, there's value for them. And I'd just love to hear from you, you know, what is a key person of influence? What are the benefits? Just your take on this.
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess the first thing is that, everything we do at Dent is about how do we help small businesses scale and grow so they can become more leveraged, more impactful, so they are far less reliant on the founder, right? That's the goal. How does the founder end up with a business that's providing them with meaning? It's providing them with an abundance of financial resources. It's providing them with a platform for influence and connection, community, all these sorts of things. Like a business can be all those things if it's done in the right way. The vast majority, as you well know, aren't having that experience from their business, right? They're stuck in the grind. It's basically a job. While they might not have a boss telling them to show up, their business is essentially the boss with all of its demands, etc. And it can be a bit of a pain in the ass. So if the goal is how do we get to what we would call that lifestyle zone of business, we put that on the entrepreneur journey somewhere between about $500,000 and $3 million in revenue, highly profitable business, not reliant on the founder. right? That would be kind of the simplest way to think about a lifestyle business. So if we just sort of freeze frame there for a moment, then we look at the ultimate wealth equation, right? Which in business is supply and demand, right? The entire market is built on these principles of supply and demand. So supply is creating a great product or service that people want, right? Whether it's a corporate consultant or a pest control business, right? A mate of mine's a pestie up on the Sunshine Coast, the better him and his team get at climbing through roofs and finding termites and, quoting on construction projects, etc. That's essentially manufacturing supply, right? It's solving the supply problem. Yeah. And you can go down a real rabbit hole with that, right? You can develop a great culture. So you're hiring great team that are all helping the operations, allowing you to do better supply. What tends to happen is most people and most businesses, certainly in the early stages, tend to default to getting better at manufacturing supply. They get good at doing the do, whether it's their personal skill set or they're trying to e-myth their business. They're doing all the right things. They're building systems and processes and best practices, and they're trying to roll themselves out of the business, and yet now they're stressed because they've got cash flow issues or lumpy sales cycles or all this sort of stuff. And it's because they've put too much focus on one side of the equation, usually unconsciously, not a great deal of awareness around it. So the moment you realize that the supply and demand equation has two sides, and the moment you realize that, oh, maybe I've been putting too much time into the supply side of the equation, then we look at the equation itself. Whenever something has an abundance of supply, but a lot less demand, prices drop, profits drop, resources disappear from the market. The reverse is the wealth equation. The reverse is where there is more demand than supply, right? Whenever there's more demand than supply of anything, prices go up, profits get realized, right? And so as a business owner, if the vast majority of business owners are defaulting to making supply, but they're accidentally ignoring demand, they're actually building themselves into an unprofitable system based on the fundamental algorithm, if you like, of wealth creation. So what we do, and I'm getting to your question, which is, what is this key person of influence thing? But I'm just trying to put it in context so people can understand why you would want to bother with this. Because most people think about becoming a key person of influence or building their personal brand or leading from the front. All that sort of stuff is like frivolous, not necessary, arrogant, ego, self-promoter, and all that sort of stuff. It can be all of those things, but it can also be none of those things depending on how you approach it. So the moment we sit there and go, okay, I recognize that, the vast majority of my company has been, my time and energy and effort is poured into the manufacture of supply, either doing it myself or leveraging it through a team. And we got issues because we haven't been doing that for demand. The moment we switch over to the manufacture of demand, which is ostensibly sales and marketing, right? But we don't, but when we understand that the sales and marketing objective is the other half of the equation, and there's only two sides of the equation, and we need to make sure that that's happening, and we're manufacturing more demand than we have supply for, then everything works. It puts it in context. And it's like, oh, okay, we've got to have the sales and marketing as rock solid as we have the delivery and the operations. So the moment we get into the manufacture of demand, the sales and marketing, what are we trying to do? We're trying to go prospecting. We're trying to go fishing. We're trying to get an audience of people that understand what we do and want to buy. The number one inhibitor for that is trust. Now, I understand to anyone listening, this might sound like, well, duh, but understand that in small business, the way that we try and compensate for a lack of trust is through building relationships. And the problem with building relationships, as lovely as they are, is it takes time. And this is the massive issue, that business owners are prioritizing and focusing on strategies for solving problems that are highly time dependent. And so to try and manufacture enough demand, not just for leads coming through, right? They've got to go out to networking events or pick up the phone and cold call. These are all time-based activities for building trust. And then a prospect is hot and now they're interested and now they got to have a sales conversation or a couple of meetings, and maybe you need to, involve a couple of different people in their team and organization. And there's you and maybe there's another person in your team helping out, etc. It's time. And then you're like, I got to get out of this. 90% of my time is now in sales and marketing, and I really need to be running the whole business, right? So you hire a salesperson or a business development person, but those people are expensive. They're also inconsistent and unreliable, not for any reason about sales and marketing. All human beings, we have bad days, we have bad weeks, we have bad months. We go through these ups and downs and phases. Now, don't get me wrong, human beings, we are the creative force behind all this sort of stuff. But the moment we start relying on time as a solution for the biggest bottleneck in the sales and marketing system, which is the building and scaling of trust, that's the number one big issue, right? And so brand is really the way to think about, is the hack for trust, right? So if you think of brand like Apple or whatever, essentially there's a whole bunch of attributes inside that people trust. And they're just like, I trust Apple. I'll pay a fortune for it. I know they're going to deliver on their promises. I'll trust Nike. I'll pay way more for a pair of shoes just because they have that brand, that trust that I'm going to get what I pay for. It means something, etc. Now, and they can do it without, like if you imagine Mercedes-Benz, right? No one knows who the CEO of Mercedes-Benz is, but people still massively trust Mercedes-Benz. It's like, yeah, but it's been around for almost a century and it was started by Mr. Mercedes, right? So it did actually start with a founder leading from the front, right? Ford, and almost all of these car companies did actually start with a human being that was the vanguard evangelist for the product and service. And the more you start to see the origin story of some of the biggest businesses in the world, it actually started with the founder as the key person of influence leading from the front. Now, that doesn't mean they are an Instagram model sticking their bottom out and, flexing their calf and being all fancy on social media, right? That's a very new form of a way that people can create influence, but it's not how people have been creating influence for 1,000 years. So just to kind of bring this home, brand is the key. There are 3 types of brand, right? So we need to leverage brand. There are 3 types of brand. There's a company brand, think Apple, right, as a broad company brand. There is a product brand. So you might have an iPad versus an iPhone versus an Apple TV or whatever it is. These are different brands within the brand. So product brands within the company brand. And then you have the founder/CEO brand. So you have the Steve Jobs brand, now the Tim Cook brand. Now, what's crazy is Apple is easily one of the most powerful top 1, 2, or 3 brands on the planet. No argument from anyone on that. And yet Tim Cook, who didn't even start it and has only been there for about 10, maybe 11 years, has twice the following on social media than the Apple brand itself, which can tell us that even at the biggest companies in the world that have infinite, effectively, resources, people still want to follow the human being, right? So the mistake that these small businesses are making is that they're trying to model Mercedes-Benz and be a faceless brand, or they're trying to model a Rio Tinto and be a faceless brand, but they miss the fact that these big companies have already gone through the trust building cycle to the point where their scale and time in the industry is trust in itself, right? As small businesses, we don't have that luxury, right? It's got to be built around the human. And so our entire thesis is that the most powerful brand to focus on first is not the product brand, which is what most small businesses default to because they think that's where the value is being delivered. It's actually the personal brand, because what's more important on the sales and marketing side of the equation, the manufacture of demand, right, is not actually the ability to communicate value. It's the ability to communicate trust. And nothing does that more effectively than a human being. So everything that is baked into the key person of influence methodology and strategy is how to leverage the founder's brand or the CEO's brand through content, through media, through stuff people can watch, read, listen, do. Because the magic of the times that we're in, Jeannie, is that we can break symmetry for almost all of history, right? It used to be that if you and I wanted to have a conversation, we had to be in the exact same place at the exact same time, right? Now, you and me right now, we're here at the exact same time, but we're not in the exact same place. So we've broken half of that symmetry. But what's crazy is that anybody actually listening to this right now, getting value from it, I hope, is not in the same place or at the same time. And it's only been in the last, maybe since radio, if you think about it, where someone could create value that was pre-recorded, where an audience could experience that value at a completely different time and place to when it was created. This is a very new phenomenon. And that used to only be available for the big kids of town. There was only a couple of TV stations, etc. Now the mere fact, like people think, oh yeah, social media, it's easily available for everyone. But it's like, no. What it is the ability to create asynergistic value, which means people can consume your personal brand, the value you create, while they're sitting on the toilet. Like never before could you create trust with someone while you're in the toilet with them. It would be very, very weird, right? Whereas now a business owner, through stuff they create that people can watch, read, listen and do, videos, podcasts, books, content, posts, etc., allows them to evangelize the message of their business, to communicate the vision, the values, the value proposition of the organization, which is the same stuff that they're going to be doing to their team, in the office anyway. It's the same stuff they're going to be doing when they're face-to-face with a partner. It's the same stuff they're going to be doing when they're trying to land a new client. Like all of the essence that they're conveying to be able to get someone in the same place at the same time to be like, wow, this is really cool. I want to work with you. It's entirely possible to capture that in a format where an exponentially larger audience can consume it because we've broken that asymmetry of time and place. That is the game behind the key person of influence strategy. It's what we've been doing for 10 years. And so that's kind of the why and the what in terms of why it's important, and hopefully potentially for some people listening, how that's helped people recognize that, you know what, I have that problem. That is the gap. The gap is on the manufacture of demand.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And with the supply and demand, so I've been in business ops most of my life, and I'm a strategic bookkeeper now. So supply and demand to me is the basis of so many things. Many years ago, someone said to me, one of my beautiful clients, one of my just all-time wonderful clients, I've signed a lease for a new one of my businesses in this location. And I was like, what? But it's such a good deal, And I said, yeah, but they've got some things over here to work on, and this is going to shift our focus. I said, why don't you let me do a supply and demand, look over? And I gave it to an urban economics group. I said, just give me a couple of $1,000s to show you definitively if this location is going to work. And they said, but there's none of our business in this area. You wouldn't believe it. There's none. But the reason there was none is there was no demand, So the urban economics was like, you go to an area where there's more of that business. And this was over 10 years ago, right? So it was more kind of bricks and mortar stuff. But the supply and demand equation, to hear that, you might think supply and demand, yeah, I know what that is. But it's kind of like, as a business owner, do you really know the impact of it? Because it is such a key rule of the game.
It is the rule of the game. Yeah, it is the foundational rule of the game that you cannot. There is no one that is successful putting resources into creating more supply than demand. It's not possible. It doesn't exist. It's like, no child thrives when you feed them less calories than their body is consuming in a day, right?
Yeah.
It will have the opposite effect. So like the demand is the food, the manufacture of demand is the energy, and the manufacture of supply is the conversion of that energy into action. Without the energy, you can have, a human being, one of the most sophisticated organisms on the planet, the most sophisticated, way more complex than a business is ever going to be. And yet, if you don't give it the right input, it's going to starve, right? And most businesses are starving because they just haven't put the systems, the best practice, the thinking in place to create that energy, that demand on front end. And I think when people think of it in the sense of that, like the capture of that energy and then the transference of that energy into action, it's like those two sides of the equation, like food and then I go for a run, same deal.
Yeah. And, I've done the Key Person of Influence program, and it's one of the most high value things I've ever done in my career. And I've worked with really high-end consultants and all of that kind of thing. One thing I think I didn't really get until a bit later was what you talk about with regard to the shift from, we used to go out and meet people one-on-one and people get to know, like, and trust us. And that is a principle that will never change. But this shift to being out, and I feel that the public, our markets actually want to be able to go online and get to know us on their own time when it suits them 24/7. And then the other thing is about serving up value, so the whole Key Person of Influence you talked about, this is not about being flashy or anything like this. I think for me, when I do it, I always just try and come back to providing value. So we have a little saying in our business where we say, if we give you some value in a way that genuinely seeks to help you do better in business, then you are probably going to say nice things about us or even decide to take it further. But definitely that's not something I got early on. And then I think that links through to, I've met business owners in industries where heaps of demand, right? So like, oh my goodness, so much demand, but they can't get the demand. They're quiet. They're not. Do you think this is about visibility?
Yeah, right. So the moment you shift onto that demand side, I think it's important for everyone to remember there's now 7 billion people on the planet, and more people are coming online now every day. Way more than half the world's population are now online. The notion that there's not demand for what you do anymore. I mean, don't get me wrong, right? Like if you're a DVD polishing business, clearly out of the game, but you might find you've got some expertise. For example, one of our clients is we have dentists, physiotherapists, quite a few different people in this specific space where they used to be hands-on physio, doing the physio work or doing the dental work. Highly competitive space, right? Like super competitive, super geographically constrained, right? You're trying to target people in that area, etc., unless you become a super specialist where people will travel, etc. But then the moment we realize that's not the only value that we have, right? So imagine a chef, right, in the restaurant, and then the chef decides to step back for a minute and look at, well, hang on, what are the recipes that I'm applying to make these meals that the waitresses are taking out to the tables? Because these are beautiful, beautiful meals. It's a well-awarded restaurant, etc. I'm the chef. I've got these great recipes. You know what? I'm going to take the time to develop a new way of delivering value to a new market. I'm going to package up these recipes into a recipe book, and I'm going to sell that recipe book. Now, the people that buy that recipe book might not actually be the people that come to the 3-star Michelin restaurant, right? Right? It might be a different niche. People coming to the 3-star Michelin restaurant might make a fortune and, they can afford it, etc. But what I want to do is I want to give people the recipe for a taste of luxury in their own home. And so, it's a whole different demographic that I'm targeting. And now I don't just need to target them, in London or Sydney or wherever my restaurant is, but I can, now sell that anywhere in the world. So in my mind, I'm now thinking of a physio and a dentist that did the same thing where they're like, we've got recipes for how to do great dentistry, how to do great physio, how to run great practices, how to do really holistic approach to this. They're able to package it up, start selling it all around the world as a recipe, right? So it's not just about there's lots of demand, I can't access it. Sometimes there's lots of demand, but the way in which my offer is packaged is no longer relevant for the times that we're in, given the opportunities that are available to, I believe there's never been a better time to be an entrepreneur, to be a creative business owner, because there are no restrictions to having a global audience these days. It is free to be able to communicate a message globally. It's almost free to be able to distribute that product globally. We can take payments from anywhere in the world for a couple of percent. It's radical. And it's so radical and it's become so ubiquitous that it's just Facebook and it's just Twitter and it's just, people taking photos of their dogs, right? It's so much more than that. It's the ability for an individual with a little bit of creativity to be able to leverage their value, their gifts that they have to offer the world in an unrestricted, unrestrained, unhindered way. There has never been a time like it, right? And it's radical. But most people don't think that way. Most people just go to work, do the same thing that everybody else in my industry is doing. And yet with a bit of that reflection, stepping back and looking, well, hang on a minute, what is the real value I have to offer? What is the source of that value? And how else could that value be packaged? See, most people aren't product design experts. They've kind of built a business that probably models. There's a vast majority of competitors that do very, very similar things, right? But now we're starting to see examples all around the world of these businesses that are doing that, right? So there are now models of businesses that have done exactly this. And it just takes a little bit of attention from these business owners that maybe are a bit stuck to go, oh, there's a whole different way I could be packaging this value I've got to offer. There's a whole different market I could be offering it to. So that would be point one. Point two is if you know you've got the right product for the right market, there's shitloads of demand and you're still not getting to it, well, this is a pitching problem. Right. This is a sales and marketing messaging communication, like the words that you use are incredibly powerful. And the way in which those words are designed as a structure, as an architecture, that when the people hear that, it changes the way people think about the problem and it creates positioning for your product or service. And that works not just at the level of customers, but it allows you to attract better team, better partners, the media, etc. And all this stuff starts working together. So it could just be a pitching issue, a messaging, communication, like how do you communicate the value that you've got? Or is it you really haven't innovated your product over the last 5 years. And if you haven't innovated your product over the last 5 years, especially with COVID in the middle of that, that's a problem, whether you know it or not.
I love product innovation. I could do it all day. I love it. And I have done exactly what you're talking about. I did KPI so that I could become a supplier to my industry. And that was really for that purpose and legacy, that impact, the next thing I want to do, the next impact I want to have. So I'm often encouraging my clients to do that, just to creating demand. So the KPI program, would you say that's about creating demand with the 5 Ps?
Well, the Key Person of Influence Accelerator program does both, right?
Yes.
So I should take a step back. So the 5 principles in the Key Person of Influence book, hang on, I just got it here. So if anyone's maybe seen it or heard of it or ends up wanting to get it, there's 5 key pillars to this notion of the moment you decide you want to build the founder brand, CEO brand, this Key Person of Influence thing, 5 pillars. Pitching is essentially the umbrella for all communication. Internal, external, like how do you communicate the value of what you do through every format imaginable? We call it pitching. We say you get what you pitch for and you're always pitching, right? The message is absolutely everything. And it's not just about pitching the features, advantages, benefits of your product or service. It's not just sales, although sales is definitely a part of pitching. Really at its big level, pitching is about paradigm building. It's about changing the way people think about a problem, or it changes the way they contextualize the challenges that they're dealing with in a way that leads them to a very clear solution. Publishing is not just about writing a book. You could publish a video on YouTube. You could publish a podcast. You could, anything where you have the ability to create value and then make it available asynchronistically to the world the moment you push send, which is radical when you think about it. That's a key piece because it creates that leverage I was talking about before. Now, when we get to product, the thing we say about product is product. And when I say product, it could be a service, it could be a physical product, it could be an intangible. So we would say there's consulting where someone's maybe charging by the hour to do consulting, but then there's packaged consulting where it's different. It's now productized. While a human being might still be showing up to do the work, it's paid for in a very different way. It's paid for based on value, not time. It's based on the outcome, not the process. Effectively, you could interchange the human beings that are involved in it because they are less important as developed by the value proposition and the process and the structure of the now productized service, which is key if you want to roll yourself out of your business and not be dependent on particular key people in the business, which is important if you want to scale, etc. So first of all, around product, it's not just a physical product, it's a productized offering, right? And I guess the reason we call it a product is that a physical product like a pen, people know what it is, they know what it does. It's very easy for them to kind of understand what this is. For the vast majority, especially of service businesses, even builders, etc., right? They might think they're building a house. It's like, no, you're not building a house. Like the intangibles that go into why someone would choose one builder over another are not easy to communicate, right? So we need to package that up in a particular way where it becomes easy to communicate. So that's step one of product. Step two of product is we say products don't make money, product ecosystems make money. So like the moment someone writes a book, for example, so we've helped over 400 of our clients become best-selling authors. The moment someone writes a book, this is the product, right? So it delivers value, people can buy it, engage with it, etc. This podcast that people are listening to, it fits into a product ecosystem. It's packaged. People can understand the value. They can decide if they're going to listen or not listen, etc. And so even when you go through pitch and publish, there are elements of both pitch and publish that are products, if you like. So product, the manufacturer of supply, to answer your question, weaves itself through all of the 5 Ps. But I guess the center point is product, then profile, which is essentially making sure you're showing up powerfully online, in the media. It's that the secret to profile is around third-party endorsement, like third-party credibility. So when someone's on the Joe Rogan podcast or the Oprah Winfrey show, there's this third-party credibility that gets transferred because people, if they're on the nightly news or, the Sydney Morning Herald or the Financial Review or Inc. or Forbes or whatever it is, people already trust or respect those publications. And so if these organizations or people have deemed you worthy of accessing their platform, then that tells the world you're worthy. That tells the world they can trust you, right? Remember, coming back to this word, trust. Right. So profile is key for accelerating that trust. And then the final step is partnerships, which is where it all comes together. Now, with pitch, publish, product, and profile, kind of like what you're doing now, you're able to create partnerships with some of the biggest brands and organizations in the world because, and you were telling me before in the green room, you still just feel like little old you, right? And had they looked at you maybe 3 years ago even, they probably would have gone, well, no. But now you've got this ecosystem of influence, which is what they see. It's like you're a human being in the Iron Man suit, if you like. You are so much more than just a person. You're actually a full thought leadership organization. You've got an integrated offer, solution. These big organizations can see that and go, that's exciting. We want that because they know, big business especially knows they're not innovative. They know that, the best way for them to grow is to partner and collaborate with young, innovative, dynamic, thought leadery type people. So the moment we start showing up in that way, not only do we have access to the blue chip or market, which is where there's just a gigantic amount of money waiting to be distributed, but it also then adds more to our reputation. So now we're not only in the media, but we're working with some of the biggest brands in the world, which just creates even more trust. It's like, okay, he's working with Apple and IBM and, all these big kind of brands and companies and featured in the media, and he's got this great product ecosystem and he's the author and speaker and commentator, and she's got this incredibly powerful message that just lines up all the way through it. And all of a sudden, presto, there's an entirely new way of experiencing not just business, but life.
And I really could understand recently how you said early on when I was doing KPI, you've got to get your pitch right before you're able to publish. And then that really feeds into product. And really, in terms of partnerships, until you've got all that in place and some kind of profile, you're not as appealing to partners. But seeing that play out was, really something.
Yeah, so this isn't a startup strategy, right? If this was a startup where someone's got zero revenue, no product, no service, no sales, we're not going to say start with pitch. We're going to say start sell something to someone, like just go and get some work, right? Brute force, prove. Whereas we work with people in the key person of influence piece, at least they've already got a service, a product, an offering. They've got a trade. They're an electrician. They're a plumber. They're a builder. They're a physio. They're an osteo. They're a lawyer. They're a doctor. They're a financial planner. They're a bookkeeper. They're an accountant. Like we work with all these sorts of people. They've already got that going on. Right. So instead of us going, let's now innovate your product straight away, we're like, let's make sure we are optimizing the messaging around the value that you've already got, because that's low-lying fruit. It costs you nothing to change the words that you use to communicate your value. And we often see a very significant shift just there. Then there's no point publishing content and sharing stuff instantly with everybody on the planet, straight away, unless that message is dialed in. So don't go to publish until you've dialed in and proven that your new pitch resonates, or you're just putting time and energy into something it's not even that you're planting a seed in land that's not fertile. It's more the other way around. You're planting a dead seed into fertile ground, right? There's no point planting dead seeds. You've got to make sure the seeds have got vitality in them, which is the pitch.
Yeah. And just to touch on origin story, I remember when I started on that with you, I didn't want to do it because I have adversity like many people in your background. Over the years, I've heard different and I absolutely did it. I sat down and I did it, and I valued it so much more over the years. And Tori Archibald talks about it being the most valuable part of your brand, to sit down and write your brand story. And I like to think of it as a book that's always open, because it's kind of always evolving, and it's behind it. Just what to find out for yourself. Oh my goodness, that's what drives me. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm landed here. The clarity that you get from that is just incredible.
Yeah. So for anyone listening, we talk about the why, right? Like why are you doing this? That's obviously the centerpiece of a powerful brand. There's got to be a meaning and a purpose behind it beyond making money. We break that why into three elements, which is the origin story, the mission, and the vision. OMV, we call it. Origin, which is all about the past, mission, which is all about the present, vision, which is all about the future. And when you can get those three lined up in a powerful way, you end up with the core of a message that powerfully resonates. Let me use Batman as an example, right? So as a kid, Batman witnessed his parents murdered. So he was the victim of crime in Gotham City, right? So there's this origin story where here's this now young kid that's the heir of $1 billion empire. And he's like, what am I going to do? And part of it is for revenge and all these different reasons. And part of it is, becoming who he's meant to be. He has this vision of Gotham City free from crime. Now, if you're to freeze frame there's lots of people that would have a vision for Gotham City being free from crime. There's the police that would want Gotham City free from crime, and all these different, maybe some of the politicians that would want to see it free from crime. So part of the origin, mission, vision is about working out what is the thing that you can uniquely bring to that goal. So it doesn't have to necessarily be a unique vision, but what you're able to bring to that unique vision is very different. So for Batman, he's the trust fund kid, right? So there's no point in joining the police force. Better him, find a big cave and put a lot of money into cool toys and a big, crazy outfit and all this sort of stuff. So then the mission so we go from the origin, okay, what's the vision? And then we come back to the mission, which is what are we actually doing day to day to be able to solve it, right? And depending on what phase the missions can change. So 1 minute we got to capture the Joker or capture the Penguin or whatever it is. There's a particular mission. I got to go up, dress up as a bat, and get after the Penguin, right? And that's the particular mission that we're focusing on right now. That's exciting. But keep in mind, if the origin story wasn't there in Batman, it would just be weird. There's this dude dressing up as a bat, running around donking baddies on the head. It's like, what? Without the context of, oh, I get it. And if you notice movies, right, every single one of them without question that wants to build a character that we love at some point goes back and builds a reason into why this all makes sense, what they're doing now. Right. And it doesn't matter what kind of movie you're watching, right? They always do that. because it's so key. We're storytelling, receiving human beings. And what's wild, right, is that you can, when you understand this origin, mission, vision, you start to see it in the world. You see Elon Musk doing it. You see Richard Branson doing it. You see Oprah doing it. You see Brene Brown doing it. They all do it, right? Every movie, every hero character, even great politician, there's this origin story of here is where I came from. Here is the seed that is informing my current action, my mission, which implies that I'm up to doing this. It's not me about becoming president. I'm here because of this stuff in the past, and this is just where it's guided me. And now the future is, all right, we're going to go and do all this new stuff. Because, of course, if someone's just like, I just want to be president for the sake of being president, and I want the power and, the influence and that kind of stuff, people are kind of going to go, oh. Or it's like, I'm just here because I want to make money. I've got a great opportunity. I want to make as much money as I can as quickly as possible. People go, oh. Whereas if it's, it's not about the influence, it's not about the money, it's not even about the business. It's about, I don't really have a choice, right? This is what kind of shaped me earlier. And now this is the best way I know how to be that person in a mature and developed way. And my vision off in the future is, if I'm able to keep executing this mission really well, we're going to make the world a better place. We're going to make the industry a better place. We're going to make, all this sort of stuff for them a better place. Now, you're also going to make your own life better, which is great. The better house, the better car, the more financial security for your family, pass more on to your kids, generational wealth. Beautiful. No one else cares about that. Right? And no one really cares how rich Elon Musk is. They care about this notion of, a sustainable shift from, to renewable energy. They care about this idea of a multi-planetary society. And that's what's communicated. So that origin story combined with mission and vision, super key.
Yeah, I began to really start to harness more of that power of sharing pieces of mine with my brand team. I was encouraged to do that so that they understood more, because it is easy to be quite protective of that story and think, I just want to lock it away and not share it, and everybody should just understand what I'm doing without me really explaining it. And then I think there's just the business owners. We often just don't really understand the importance of it and the value of it. So next, Glen, I just want to ask you about how people can work with KPI. So what I often do with my clients, because I'm working with business owners who are established, like you talk about right there, they've got good business, they're great at what they do. They're usually delivering a remarkable on-point service. They're often really time poor. And so sometimes what I do is I'll identify, for example, it would be so great for you to do the KPI program, but I can see right now if you did it, you might fall over because we haven't made some room for it. So often I work with clients to help them make a bit of room, in their days, so that they can do the next big thing. One of the things I encourage them to do is either read Daniel's book, so read Key Person of Influence, read all of them. I read them twice before I joined. Just such great sales and marketing resources, mind-blowing. But I know I never did your scorecard. You've got a scorecard as well.
Yeah, the Key Person of Influence scorecard, people can just Google it. It'll pop up. It's essentially a tool for benchmarking each of those 5 pillars that I spoke about before, the 5 Ps: pitch, publish, product, profile, partnerships. Our whole philosophy is we're a very data-driven, performance-driven organization. What gets measured gets improved. You can go through and answer about 40 questions. It'll benchmark your ability to influence in each of those categories, help identify blind spots, opportunities for growth, etc. And then you can come back and do it again 3 months later, 6 months later, 12 months later, and see the progression.
Yeah, I love that. I love the diagnostics. I did one with a client the other day around, they're making tons of money. So now it's more about prosperity, time, rich, etc. Is the business still killing you? So we did that before and after prosperity score. And it's so important to be able to see the needle move, right? So, and your KPI program opens 4 times a year, is that right?
Well, no. Post-COVID, it's evolved to the point where people can join anywhere, anytime, and we have a specialized on-ramp. Eventually, it all moves into a very consistent cadence with everybody doing the same thing at the same time. But there's so much, I guess, personalization that can happen prior to that we've now developed, personalized on-ramps to the program. So, first of all, there's just something on my mind about this create space first, whether it's for KPI program or not. I think that's the wrong way around. The universe abhors a vacuum. And I think my experience is I think others always struggle to create space unless there's an imperative to create space, right? So it's almost like if the garage is a mess, it's like, well, let's just clean the garage. It's like, Whereas when you buy the new car and you drive it up and you're worried about the hailstorm coming, then it's like all of a sudden the garage gets cleaned really quickly so the new car can get in the garage and be looked after. I always find that the best way to optimize for time is to decide, like, what is the most important thing first? What are we going to use that time for first? And maybe it's playing cricket with your kids on the beach, right? Maybe it's doing something like building your personal brand. Maybe it's, acquiring another business, like whatever it is. But I think people have got to decide and commit to the thing first and then go about reverse engineering what they've got to do to be able to delegate and elevate second. Otherwise, my experience is without a clear focus, if ever something happens in my business where I have more time, but if I'm not very clear beforehand on what I want to use that time for, it just fills up with noise all by itself, right? So it becomes this problem. So I think step one would be that. Step two is, people can just reach out to me on social media. It's Glen Carlson. They can send me an email, glen@dent.global. If anyone listening just lets me know that you've been listening, shoot me through your name and a postal address. We'll send you out a copy of the Key Person of Influence book gratis. So we'll get that out really easily. Anyone can just Google Key Person of Influence scorecard and it'll pop up. Just do that and benchmark your influence and that'll take you down a rabbit hole as well. But I think the thing to really get is that a lack of money and or a lack of time is the symptom of an unhealthy business, right? People with buckets of money, as you were saying, but don't have any time, that's a design problem, right? And most people don't think of it like that. Most people are just like, I just don't have time, because that's just the thing everyone says about everything, right? It's the ultimate excuse. Whereas, if you're living in a house and it was raining and you were wet in your own house, you're going to sit there and go, there's something fundamentally wrong with this house. I got to fix it. Like the roof's leaking, the bed's wet, everything's wet, like getting moldy, this shit, we got to fix it. For whatever reason, and no one would put up with a leaky house, right? Everyone would just go, okay, we got to fix it. But almost everyone puts up with a time and money eating monster of a business. Either it doesn't make money and they struggle, or they don't have free time and they just think this is just how it has to be, etc. The moment those two things become non-negotiable, it's like, no, I must have a business that gives me freedom of time and money, or else just, then all of a sudden that imperative forces design thinking. They listen to this podcast, they do work with you, they might do work with us, they might do work with someone else. Like they start looking for, okay, this is no longer acceptable. And I think until someone decides that this is no longer acceptable, they'll just keep going around and finding new ways to burn time, new ways to do their business that doesn't give them time or money or whatever it is. So I think often the first thing is just to realize that no, it's entirely possible to build a business that gives you both time and money, but that's got to be a standard that is a non-negotiable, like a leaky roof.
Yeah, and get past the mindset, because it's just all too often I hear it's different for me and I can't do it.
Yeah. Well, I just like the metaphor. It's different for me. I just can't do it. The leaky roof is just what it is. I just can't do it. It's like, oh, you precious little snowflake. It's weird, right? Like, I think because business is intangible, right? The house is very clear. I can get a builder to come in and put a new roof on. Like, okay, I can work that out. But because business is a large part, it's intangible. It's a bunch of meetings and conversations and sort of fires that people have got to put out and problems to solve. I think it creates this illusion that a business is something it's not. Like it's this kind of existential kind of thing it's like, it's not. Like, and I guess this is the beauty of our organization is we've codified it, right? There's a framework, there's a structure, there's a checklist, there's a process for everything. It's a very data-driven approach to mapping this stuff out. And so the moment you sit there and you look at all these architectures and frameworks and realizing, oh, wow, right, there's so many gaps in my business because it's been so ephemeral the whole time. And now we're able to use these frameworks to start, I guess, converting what is otherwise an intangible business into a very tangible, packaged structure. I think it takes a lot of that personal fear, doubt, insecurity, uncertainty out of it. It's like, okay, here's the pathway. Here's what we got to do. We just get on with it. We got to fix the roof. And a lot of that, like, I'm not enough, disappears. Like in the same way that no one has this imposter monster challenge with fixing a leaky roof. It's just a problem that needs to be solved in a very practical way. Business really should be seen as exactly the same thing. And I think the only reason it's not is because it's so intangible, and people don't have or haven't found a good architecture for making it appear tangible for them and everyone on their team. And that's probably a massive first step for sure.
I think prioritize and back yourself. That's what I keep telling myself. You know, I remember when I joined KPI, I felt like I found my people. I found my tribe. And obviously, and it was like, oh, they're my aliens. I found my planet.
You found my aliens, yeah.
And if you're listening and thinking, oh, this, I might check this out. I might have a look at it. I might join the program. You are welcome to talk to me as well. Whether you're a client, whether you're not a client, I'm part of the community and we all support each other. Only the other day, my partner said, do you know such and such? And I said, of course I do. I connected with him through KPI. And he said, but he's a global superstar. And I said, well, he's my Facebook friend. So the network that you come into, and it's just the global superstars. It's just the awesomeness of everyone. But as a KPI alumni myself, anyone can talk to me. And if you do the program too, and we help you with the strategic bookkeeping, which is obviously so critically important, right? Know your numbers. Then I can also support you in that journey as well. Where I've been on the journey a couple of years. So as you can tell, very passionate about it. So I think we're going to wrap it there. So Glen Carlson, thank you so much for coming on my show.
Well, I just want to say also thank you, because you bring up a really important point. I don't know a single successful entrepreneur that doesn't know their numbers. And most businesses want to avoid knowing their numbers because they suck. Not, them as a human being sucks, but their numbers suck and they prefer to ignore it. And the thing that I like about what you do is you don't just help people recognize the numbers, but you help people point to the strategy and the ways to think about optimizing and improving those numbers, because it is a law of the universe. In the same way that supply and demand is this law of the universe, what gets measured gets improved. And I think, you've just got an ultimate mechanism for being able to bring measurement, accountability, and optimization to both the manufacturer of supply and the manufacturer of demand, because it all shows up in the P&L on the balance sheet and the cash flow, and you're able to bring visibility to that. And so, thank you, because we can produce all the key people of influence, but if they don't know their numbers and they're not tracking what they need to be tracking, it's like you can't fix a leaky bucket with more water. And you kind of help people recognize where the bucket is leaking in a way more granular, tactical, commercial way than I suppose we do. So it's a good partnership.
It works really, really well. And I like to say that because we are strategic bookkeepers more than tax accountants, I say we get down and dirty in the numbers with you. We're not coming with all the answers, we're coming with all the questions. And we work with everyone in this real relevant way, like all the time. Just what's next? What is the critical driver of profit here? What do we need to make sure that the target gets met and all this kind of thing? But always with the end in mind, which is why we link so well with KPI, because, if I get someone that feels like a hamster on a wheel and they say, I'm so busy and I want to hit the reverse button because I hate where I'm at. I say, well, where are you going? What's your end game? They go, I don't probably be running a marathon without knowing where you're going. You need to stop and figure out, do you want more time with your children, or what do you want? And then you can design it with all the tools and the resources. I've always been crystal clear on what I want. That's why 5 years into my little practice I run now, I set it up to work 4 hours a week. So crystal clear. And so that's, I think, for the numbers with us, and why we can refer to organizations like KPI is because we're always saying to the client, what are we working for? Your profit and cash oxygen, we've got to get that. But then once we've got that, what are we really working for? And for some of us, it's impact and purpose too, and legacy. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Kindred spirits. I appreciate you. I appreciate your awesomeness, and I appreciate you letting me talk to your audience.
Thanks, Glen.
Thanks for tuning in. For more information on this episode or how to work with me, check out the show notes. If you'd like to know how I can help you do better in business, you know where to find me, betterinbusiness.global. See you in the next episode.